All right, here it is, Slick Dissident. Welcome, my friend. How you doing today?
Wonderful, brother. Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, man, it's been great. We've been chatting for quite a while, and I remember back when I was doing some Dante Inferno dives that you had some cool ideas, and we finally made it happen. Happy to have you here, man, and I'm really looking forward to. Well, there's quite a number of things we could get into today, but just to keep it simple, I've got a ritual first question for a first time guest, and I'm hoping you're coming back on many times because our conversation before we even hit record was quite intense. So I'm excited to get into it, brother. So, when did you start to speak your truth?
Mhm. Uh, when I was very young, I discovered the joy of martial arts, and movement has always been my expression from a very young age. And so I am still a martial artist. I always have been, and started out in Taekwondo. Took a little break when I went to college, and then I discovered capoeira. Uh, and I was in massage school, and I met this beautiful capoeirista, uh, and she was a lovely redhead master. She was an absolute master, and uh, she broadened my horizons in unbelievable ways. And so, yeah, for about 20 years now, I've been a practitioner of the lovely Afro-Brazilian ritualistic dance fighting that is known as capoeira. And I attribute a lot of my uh, kind of unique thinking style
Hmm.
to a lot of the unique movement of that game. So yeah, that's movement has always been my thing. And now, as I'm getting into my uh, 40s at this point, I realize that I also have a lot going on up here,
Yes, sir.
and and so yeah, these past couple of years, ever since the old lockdowns, I've just been developing what I have to offer in my mind and finding lovely ways to express that. So yeah, only recently have I found my intellectual voice, and my little YouTube project, my shared learning experience over there, has been just a nice avenue for me to get a lot of those thoughts out and develop them and let them grow.
Right on, my friend. And that's a perfect segue. Please let people know. So I'm here with Slick Dissident, and that's your YouTube channel. I just want you to can you like fill people in if they've never visited your channel, which has quite a variety to offer, and just fill people in. What could they expect, and how can they find your YouTube channel?
Oh, absolutely. Um, well, a lot of what I do is, I started out with the intent of teaching, psychic self-defense.
Hmm.
Um, the last couple of years before lockdowns, I apprenticed and became a padded assailant, which is uh, an individual who wears a padded suit and will run uh, students of various skill sets, all the way from people who can't even stand a verbal argument, all the way up to the full spectrum. I've actually trained a couple police officers who
Hmm.
they were partners. So yeah, the full spectrum of students. But I'm basically the guy in the suit who would run them through scenarios to prepare them psychologically and physically to kind of get through any blocks that people deal with in conflict situations.
Interesting. Wow.
And so my project in the beginning, I started off with the intent of uh, kind of bringing people through the idea of psychic self-defense with that in mind. I believe it's the Art of War, one of the introductions of the Art of War that I read. It starts off saying that normal people don't think this way. And what you learn in the book, The Art of War, is basically militarizing your thinking. And that's like the opening disclaimer. And I was like, well, that's really important.
Hmm.
And sure enough, it opened my mind. And so that's kind of the approach that I took when I started my channel. But then it took on a life of its own, and it's become like more of a creative uh, learning experience, so to say. So I think I started with the presumption of teaching, and I've learned that I was the student all along. So
Funny how that
I,
always works. Yeah.
yeah, so I try to keep kind of a humble attitude about it, and I don't claim to know anything, but I do think a lot of the things I've shared are unique. That a lot of things people haven't thought about and are just there on offer if anybody
Hmm.
is interested.
Right on, right on. And it's ironic because I was planning to ask you this. So, if you don't mind stepping into a teacher role for a second, because recently, so I know that on your channel, you work a lot with the tarot and also etymology. I gotta say, man, like you've taught me a lot about language that like there are things now that when I slow down and really analyze what I'm saying or what I'm hearing or what I'm reading, it's fascinating. It's between you and Chance and Juan and Mark, all these wonderful podcasts. There's a lot to be learning about, and uh, particularly with tarot, though, there's something that I've been trying to understand about correspondence. And recently, actually yesterday, I spoke with Whitney Fox, and she came on and pulled a tarot card at the beginning and the end of our conversation. So it was kind of cool that at the end she pulled the justice card to close out the episode. The intention was to give a reading for the audience, whoever was listening in that particular moment, which the episode will be released on Monday. So on Monday, we'll feel those energies, which is the Lunar New Year anyway. But so we've got the Justice card, and I did a quick search earlier before our chat today about the corresponding number. So it's the 11th card of the major arcana, and I saw this one correspondence. I was curious. This is a good place to start as far as I'm learning that justice. The Justice card corresponds with the planet Venus, and I'm just curious, how do people come to that conclusion? Do you agree that there's a correspondence there? And, how does one begin to study the correspondence of tarot and how the cards could be associated with different planets or signs? There's so many different uh, points and directions you can go from a single tarot card. Where do you begin? What would you say?
Wow, great, great setup. Well, I would say you're right. It's in the standard tarot. It is the 11th card, having a strong relationship with Libra.
Mm,
And uh, I didn't know about the Venus part. I have seen, in terms of planetary correspondences, I've seen a few different ways to fit it. But
yeah, it was Google.
right, right. But I do see that Venus is balanced in a beautiful way because Venus has one of the most perfect orbits around the sun,
Mm.
whereas a lot of other planets will have an apogee and a apogee, perigee, where we're close and far.
Oh, okay.
And in Venus has a balanced orbit
Hmm.
where it's never far or close. It's like
Pretty consistent.
yeah, so even like it makes me think of Tool and their perfect circle
Hmm.
is so that's kind of beautiful about Venus in terms of balance, as in the scales. Um, and uh, oh, and so it's one thought that came to mind as you were saying that is that that was one of the cards that got altered or manipulated in the Crowley Thoth deck.
Interesting.
Yep. And for me, at first, I always thought, oh, that bastard, that diabolical bastard, he's always fucking shit up. Can I say that?
Oh, of course. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's always fucking with stuff. But then you look into it, you give it some time, and you find out that there's a very good reason for that expression.
Hmm.
Um, Somebody has informed me that that actually hails back to an older tarot system
Hmm.
that the Justice card was uh, in Leo, or it was the eighth card in the Solabusca deck. So then you got to go and reason out and research and find out why. Um, but I would say this. So when he flipped it to that old European Solabusca flair, he also changed the name Justice to Adjustment
Oh wow. Yeah.
in his deck. And so one lesson I've learned about that is, and this is a very Velikovskian concept, is that Venus might be the youngest planet.
Mm. Hmm.
It might be the newborn sun, the newborn sign. It might be the newest adjustment to the order of the spheres, so to say. So, from a Velikovskian perspective, calling the Justice card the adjustment card is strangely appropriate.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that's just a few things to riff on why Venus might be appropriate to call Justice or the adjustment.
Interesting. Yeah, and you had mentioned, it's typically associated with Libra, and I remember, my first time hearing about these correspondences was through our awesome mutual friend Mario Garza at Symbolic Studies, and he was telling me about Taurus and the Hierophant, and I forgot to ask him, but I wanted to have him kind of explain, like, well, what is it about Taurus that aligns with this card? It kind of made sense when he spoke about Gemini aligning with the lovers, because there's two lovers and we have that
Mhm.
twin theme there. But yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I definitely want to study the correspondence, because I feel like it's one of those keys. Like, if you can look at one card and draw many conclusions or point in many directions to different aspects, different themes like that, I think it's pretty cool. And that's kind of a testament to the work you've been doing on your YouTube channel, because you can take a concept like one single tarot card can link to so many other ideas, and it's amazing. And it's this term, for people who don't know, if you guys listen to Gabe, they'll use the word gravy a lot. Gabe and Chance from Interverse. What is gravy, my friend? How would you explain the concept of gravy in your linguistic repertoire?
Oh, that is fun. Uh, well, there's a gravity to gravy.
Mm.
So it has an allure. It's very savory. You get a smell of it, and you know there's more, and you desire more. So it pulls you in like gravity. So that definitely comes to mind. And as you were speaking, I forgot to mention Libra would be a library.
Oh, it
Uh,
is. Yeah, Libra. Yeah.
Libra library. So the aspect of law and justice, if you want to be fluent in law, then you're going to need a library of books. Particularly, everybody should have Black's Law in their life.
Mm,
That's a good starter kit. So that comes to mind as well. Thought I'd throw that in the mix. Who's
nice.
that?
This is Hershey.
Hey.
Just adopted her a couple days ago. Actually, wow, it's crazy. I think it was two days ago that I adopted Hershey. She's
Sweet.
brand new. Yeah. Yeah. She's fitting right in. She was meowing during my chat with Whitney. It was pretty fun. It was something something new, and she's been wonderful. But, yeah. Okay. Well, I really think as far as the tarot goes, I think we're gonna be talking about it a lot in the next hour or so. Who knows how long we're gonna go on, but I did want to ask you something. And let me give you a bit of context first. So about 2 years ago, well, I guess three now. I'm not used to 2023, but in the summer of 2020, I had surgery. Scar, can't really see it much, but I got a disc fused in my spine, in my neck. So I went to the hospital, got the surgery. It went great. I guess I'm lucky. But when I was recovering, because I only stayed overnight for one day, and my friend sent me a video about Iron Man in the Marvel Avengers movies and Vulcan. And I was watching this clip, and it was pretty cool because there were so many things popping up at the same time. So let me start by just letting people know why I'm bringing this up, is because when I asked you, what do you want to chat about on the podcast, you had mentioned Vulcan directly, and I was wondering if you wanted to start to get into that. And uh, what I want to share really quick is, it was funny looking into Iron Man and Vulcan because the video that I was watching pointed to the Vulcan statue in Birmingham, Alabama, who the man who created the statue, his name is Giuseppe Moretti. And when you look into his Wikipedia, you see that he was someone who helped build the Rothschild Palace. Interesting connections there. And then
Big
there's
time.
also a connection to the World's Fair. So there's a lot of different directions. Birmingham, Alabama also has a funny sound to it. There's so much to get into, but Iron Man, Vulcan, volcanoes, even Venus and Aphrodite will come up in some particular way here. So, where would you
Yeah,
like to begin? What was your thought process when you decided to send me this Vulcan information?
right. Well, uh, yeah, Vulcan has many, many incarnations, many names. And the spirit of Vulcan has really drawn me in and taken me on quite an adventure. Um, uh, and so, some of my earliest works, like in on my channel, and this is literally what got me up off my seat because I realized I was seeing something that I wasn't, that nobody else was going to say.
Hmm.
And so I did. I literally came out of my shell so that I could be the one to point out, you know, you kind of get wind of a little synchronicity. You're like, oh, there's 22 primary Marvel movies. You know, after Endgame, they were sitting on 22, and in
Hmm.
my mind, I thought, well, that's fascinating. The 22 cards of the major arcana have been also on my mind at the same time. And so I just took the time and I wrote down all of the Marvel movies in the order that they are presented chronologically in Marvel
Okay.
world,
Yeah,
not so much in reality, but in Marvel world
the
in the
Marvel
order that
timeline. Yeah.
you got it. Yep, by their timeline. And then I just wrote down all the tarot cards right next to it in the order of the tarot cards. And then I just started literally connecting the dots just in my little notebook, which is really cute because, you know, that's like the quintessential trope of the conspiracy theorist is a guy with a cork board and he's taking
Exactly.
pieces of yarn and
Yep.
sticking it. You know what I
Connecting
mean?
all the dots. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just did that on this one little page in my notebook. And sure enough, I had found uh, powerful correspondence with almost all of them. And just an interesting aside here, it was Black Panther was the hardest one to fit in.
Hmm.
And I had to. It was the last one. It was like by reason of deduction, there were no other options, and so uh, Black Panther fit in with the star card, but the star card has nothing black about it. It's a white lady in a bathing pool, generally. But come to find out, so the star card is in Aquarius, and the shape of the sign for Aquarius is like two sketchy lines, right? Well, that's the shape that Black Panther makes when he
True. Okay. I see what you mean. Yeah.
claws leave sketchy little lines, and then
Hmm.
it started to all come together, and then you get into the elements of it. But so back back to the Iron Man. Iron Man's corresponding cards will be Iron Man 1 is the Hermit card.
Hmm.
And if you look at almost any Hermit card, you can do this with most of the cards. And it's good to look at multiple decks because it reinforces uh, your command, your apprehension of the archetype to see it in many people's different forms and expressions. So the Hermit card is generally an elderly fella. He's got a staff and he's holding up a lantern. It's also, I believe, Stairway to Heaven. The cover of
Yes.
Stairway
Yeah.
to Heaven is a
Yeah.
Hermit card.
Zeppelin. Right.
You got it. Um, and you know, I never did this, but it would be neat to find out that there's like they had Led Zeppelin in the soundtrack of the movie somewhere.
Oh yeah,
That's
maybe it was playing backwards or something.
yeah, yeah, that's totally the kind of thing they would do. But I didn't dig that far. But yeah, so Iron Man 1 is absolutely the Hermit card because he's imprisoned in a stone cave. His name
Mm,
is Tony Stark.
mm,
In his apotheosis moment, he comes out of the cave and he sets everybody on fire like a lantern,
right.
and then that's his initiation from the stony arc.
You know, I want to quickly bring this up since you brought up the soundtrack. I vividly remember the opening scene of Iron Man. They're playing Back in Black by AC/DC. And this kind of alludes to like a hermit who is going to return. I mean, he goes deep into that cave to construct his his prodigy or like his magnum opus, and then he returns. He's back. So I just wanted to put that out there because
Nice.
yeah,
Yes,
there it
yes,
is.
yes. And oh, that there's so much to go on. So the Hermit card is in Virgo, corresponds to Virgo,
Hmm,
and also just between Leo and Virgo, there is a sacred holiday, and that is Vulcanalia.
hmm,
And so as you're rolling out of August and into uh, September, you will cross over the holiday of the volcano god. And so it is so powerfully significant that that Vulcan is intrinsic to Tony Stark's character, and the fact,
absolutely.
yeah. And then the back in black aspect. This is one that has served me well. Vulcan is often depicted as uh, with darkness as a kind of part of his
Hmm,
iconography, the darkness. But I don't always think of it. I think sometimes it's depicted as a black person, like in the Eternals. The character Hephaestus was a black dude. He was
true.
dead. He was straight up a black dude. But I will also point out that if you were a god of the forge, you would be covered in soot.
Exactly. That's what I thought you were gonna say. Yeah, yeah,
Got it, man. You got it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Think
So
of like a coal miner, or yeah.
yep.
Hmm,
So yeah, back in black is quite appropriate for with that. But you can't. But they can't do blackface.
hmm,
You see, so they're
yeah.
dancing around a very, very, uh, yeah, a dangerous faux pas, so to say. So
Hmm,
it's kind of a neat thing to know and to keep an eye out for. So then I believe I'm a little rusty on this, but then um, Iron Man 2, I believe, falls into the station of the Hierophant card,
hmm,
and then Iron Man 3 is the Chariot card. And I do recall I think it's in Iron Man 3. I might be flipping these, but it's in Iron Man 3, I think, where there's a huge, like, it's like a aircraft carrier in the sky, and it's about to crash, and he has to literally use his suit to go and jumpstart the propellers
right. Yes. Yeah.
to, to make the whole ship fly again.
Hmm,
And so that is the embodiment of the chariot card.
chariot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
So
interesting.
yeah, it's been really fun to like use something that's so entertaining to gain a deeper understanding for something so esoteric and that was unknown and foreign to me, you know?
Yeah, it's on the surface level is where the entertainment is, and then there's so many opportunities to dig deeper. I mean, it could be even simple as like a pun, like or some kind of reference. Like I know recently, one thing I really want to ask you, because people may not be familiar with the Black Knight satellite. It's a sort of a topic I've seen you've been posting a lot about. In the telegrams, and it's interesting because that made me think of Darth Vader, although I am aware that this is more of a topic about extraterrestrial or a spacecraft like a satellite.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious, because you've been posting about it a lot. I think you also had some Egyptian iconography with it. Like I know like the SpaceX Falcon is very, very correspondent to the myths of Horus and Osiris. And so when you're thinking about the satellite, the Black Knight satellite, it's very peculiar. There's a lot to get into. I just, I'm kind of curious what your thought process is, and if you want to explain how this came about in your thinking and what you would like to share about that particular topic.
Nice. Yes. Well, uh, the first thing I thought, the first time that I looked into the Black Knight satellite, it was quite a while back, probably 5 years, 4 or 5 years ago. I, kind of went down that rabbit trail,
Hmm.
and I had this, I had that still small voice in the back of my head that said, the shape of the craft, it has that kind of that tilt to its nose,
Hmm.
seems very distinguished and distinct. And in the back of my head, I was saying, that reminds me of Thoth,
Oh yeah.
the, who is an ibis, uh, or generally some sort of bird with this very long nose. And I thought that is just an interesting coincidence, and I wrote it off.
Hmm.
But now I'm coming back to all of those little hunches that I've had over the years, and I'm like, what if there's more here? So I made that graphic. And as I start making these visual, one thing I love with the visual, I mean, they're not really memes, but these visual things that I put together is, if a picture says 1,000 words, then I can take 4 or 5 pictures and say 5,000 words.
Exactly. Yeah.
you know
Yep.
and so, yeah, what I did was I basically just screenshot the all the images that come up when you search Black Knight satellite, and then I just started putting Thoth, who is recording. He's always got a stylist.
Hmm.
He's always writing things down. The Crowley's deck is called the Thoth deck. Sometimes he's also called Tahuti, but he's a record keeper,
Hmm.
and which attributes him to a scribe or a scarab or a person who is keeping track of things. And it's kind of fascinating because the Black Knight satellite has a polar orbit. It goes north to south.
Hmm.
And that rings very familiar to Santa Claus to me.
Yeah, yeah, it really does.
When you mention polar, I instantly think, and guess what? Santa Claus has a list. He's checking it
Yep,
twice.
he is absolutely that kind of thoth scry. Yeah, yeah, you're right
Right.
on there. Yeah.
Right. So I find these threads and I start putting them together, and things get really interesting and fascinating. Well, somebody mentioned Psalms 91.
Hmm.
And I looked into Psalms 91, and sure enough, it talks about building a kingdom in the sky, or a tower, or a fortress in the sky, and preparing the kingdom to come in the heavens. And sure enough, they dropped the name Elion,
Yes.
Eleyon. And I'm like, oh
Hmm.
my gosh,
Sounds familiar.
this is creepy. We're talking about space. We're talking about an Elion and this promised land up above. I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, that's got to go on the graphic. So I
Yeah.
plug in Psalms 91. I think it also talks about like keeping track of,
Of
the
course.
sheep
Right.
or the flock who are going to be there, or going to get
Yeah.
in or not get in. So that was really fascinating. But then it occurs to me that BKS, Black Knight satellite. Flip around, you get SKB. He's a scribe.
Yeah.
SKB, he's scribbling down notes.
Hmm.
And that's when the consistency of it all was just like too much to not give birth to.
Mm.
So yeah, I started circulating that one, and I think I might have upset some people, because when you put, Egyptian mythos in with biblical passages, people get a little upset. Uh, but I'm sure it generated a lot of thoughts.
Exactly. Yeah. Like in the spirit of correspondence and, divergent thinking, you could say that like you
Mhm.
place two things together, you juxtapose them that don't seem to relate, or maybe they're not typically associated together. But I think it's always valuable. And that's what I enjoyed so much about, like, we had talked about tarot and how, you could ascribe cards to the movies, like you went through the Iron Man movies. I know you've also done the Star Wars characters, all the archetypes, which is a really fascinating rabbit hole. And it's there's correspondences everywhere, and I think that's what I'm coming away with so far. And one that you brought up in our Telegram chat, which I spent a little time looking at it today. You mentioned the chariot earlier, and there's a constellation associated with this chariot. We have a lot to talk about with the chariot, and one thing in particular to start with was Rene Descartes. And I was having fun looking this up because you put the screenshots together, like you're basically making memes, and I think people are lucky enough to see them. It's really cool because you're giving a quick upload, or like a quick download of correspondence consciousness information. You just see that meme and you're like, okay, wow, that's a lot of information coming at like it's an entire essay in one image, like you said. So you can see Rene Descartes. You sent the translation, so from Portuguese to French. Descartes spelled Jeter, like Jeter, Jeter. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I tried to reverse it to figure out what does Descartes really translate to, and it's to discard. I don't know if you had picked up on that as well. Um,
Whoa.
yeah. But anyways, I didn't really know much about his backstory. But I'll just quickly mention this, and then I'll let you fill it in. That he grew up pretty sickly. He's very profoundly intelligent as this archetypal philosopher, scientist, mathematician. But he was paralyzed or crippled in some fashion, so he depended on the chariot to get around. That was, if you want to think about his ideas, that's one thing, but his day-to-day life, he was definitely associated very strongly with the chariot, and that's where I'd want to start.
Mhm.
So again, I keep on asking, what was your thinking? How did you come to this conclusion? Where does it all begin? I'd love to learn
Yeah.
more about this.
Yes, this one is so hard to bring it all to bear. There is like, I will probably miss more than I can remember. This is really a fascinating concept, and I owe so much to our friend Mario Garza
Yeah,
on this. Because Mario, he is a Cancer, and so he has done a lot of this legwork, and I'm just kind of picking up some of the things that he gifted us with over on the Weaving Spiders webs, uh, and running with it. I mean, I'm taking it to levels where he's like, "Whoa,
nice.
buddy, slow down." uh, so yeah, uh, the Charioteer is in Cancer, and thanks to Mario, he is kind of brought forward some of the myths of the characters who are encapsulated in many of the depictions of the Charioteer card.
Mm,
And one of the themes is that the Charioteer, they are often depicted with no legs, almost as though they're growing out of a cube or a block of
mm,
stone. And the chariot that they are inside of, even though it does have lions, often the lions are in a passive position. And if you really analyze or think about it, even if you don't think about it, it's subliminal.
mm,
So if you didn't think about it in the front of your mind, somewhere you are going to pick up on the fact that that chariot isn't going anywhere.
mm.
It doesn't really, it's not functional. So there's an illusion there. And the mystery of looking into what that means has opened up doors upon doors upon doors for me. And one of Mario's wonderful ideas is the concept of like the modern day chariot is the office chair.
Yeah, right, right.
And I just love that he says that, because people get a sense of accomplishment sitting at this chair, And sure, it'll wheel around a little bit, kind
You're
of,
not really going anywhere.
not
Yeah.
going anywhere. And you get so much done in a day that you're exhausted, but you were
Mm-hmm.
just sitting.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is such a profound uh, uh, encapsulation of meaning, so profound. So uh, that being said, these are some of the themes that we can build on. And so one character, so he has brought forward Auriga, and Auriga is a constellation, and its constellation is shaped as a pentagram or a pentagon, excuse me, a pentagon. And Auriga has a goat on, he's hugging a mother goat on his shoulder, and her name is Capilla. And so she's an asterism. She's a little constellation inside of the pentagon.
Interesting.
And then he also, his other hand behind his back, he has two little goats
Hmm.
sometimes behind his back. And the two little goats behind his back, I think of those as his kidneys,
Yeah, the kidneys.
the
Yep.
kidneys behind, right? And so in one of the ingredients of Origa is that they call him sometimes the lame charioteer.
Hmm.
And so that's another ingredient here is this is why he's immobilized, but he used his mind to overcome that adversity to excel and in fact
Hmm.
become like the greatest the greatest of all time.
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
the
The
goat
goat. Yeah.
of of the chariot. And so there are many characters like Eric Thonius is another interesting kind of historical, maybe historical, mundane expression of
Hmm.
somebody born with legs that don't function, but he became a master because he used his strengths, you
Yeah,
know?
I mean, I instantly thought of Ivar the Boneless from the Viking show because you talk about someone great, like he's like a war hero, even though he can't walk, he can't use his legs at all, Yeah.
Yes, yes. And there's a another part of this is an archetype. I mean, this is what
Mm,
we're dealing with. Another part of that archetype is that I believe that character, I didn't watch that series, but I've heard of him, but he has there's something repulsive about their 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 disability. Uh, so uh, so this story is also the story of Hephaestus.
mm.
And so what happens here is you'll hear as I talk about these people, they kind of fuse into one.
Just to back up
Yeah.
really quick,
Mhm.
because this is something that I just learned today. So Hephaestus and Vulcan, who are they exactly? Because they're the same person, right? They're the same deity.
Pretty much. And this is good because one thing that is really valuable is to know the chronology,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
who came first and who became this, that became that. So we could say, like, if I wanted to really be a nerd, which I
Go
do,
for it. Go for it. Yeah.
we could say that this may start as the Hindu Arjuna,
Arjuna.
who's a master of weaponry and craftsmanship. Uh, and then you could also say it also has an Eastern incarnation as Agni.
Hmm.
And Agni is like a Hindu god of the volcano or the forge of the fire. Um, and then you could maybe say that that became, there's probably some in between, but then you would have Hephaestus is the Greek incarnation of this archetype. And then Hephaestus begot Vulcan, which would be a more Roman uh, version. And then from there, that's where it kind of, where the rubber hits the road, yuck,
Hmm.
yuck, yuck, because it becomes Ericthonius. And Ericthonius is like a believable myth
Hmm.
that has probably been pawned off as historical, and I'm not making any claims on what's true and what's not. I'm just saying this is literally a mundane incarnation of the same archetype.
This is something that you brought up in our chat that mythology maybe from your perspective, and I'm not familiar with the last myth, so maybe you can fill me in, but the mythology is becoming more and more historical, and I guess this is lending credence to the research and the correspondence. It almost kind of reminds me of astrotheology as well. I mean, if we're thinking about mythical figures, uh, archetypes, if you will, that are being portrayed in certain ways. There's different ways you can look at them. Some could be luminaries in the sky. Other mythical, magical beings or deities can be viewed in a quite different way than what their legends have portrayed them as. But who is that last mythological figure from
Eric Eric
Hephaestus?
Ericthonius.
Erichthonius. Okay.
Yes, Ericthonius has all of the ingredients of Hephaestus's story.
Hmm.
And so sometimes you will hear people say that like Hephaestus gave birth to Auriga, and then in Auriga just lived out the same pattern that Hephaestus did.
Hmm.
So if you read and there are little discrepancies or differences from one story to the next, and those inform our our accuracy and our I guess our respect.
Hmm.
To have more respect for the story is to know that, well, the Greeks told it this way, but the Romans told it this way, and culturally that's important. That distinguishes the difference in their lifestyle and where their
Yeah.
priorities were. Um, so yeah, Ericthonius also was said to have been born with lizard legs
Wow.
or
Yeah.
serpent legs, very much like Abraxas.
Hmm.
So it has, you can you'll hear these echoes or it rhymes with something else. It's very
Always.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so Ericthonius was born with these lizard legs, and because it was un appealing,
Hmm.
the community or the people around his mother were appalled to look at him. They didn't
Hmm.
even want to see him. And then she gets all this shame put on her for her creation.
Hmm.
And she's embarrassed about him. And so she casts him away or puts him in a basket and sends him down a river, maybe.
Oh, okay. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, yeah. And so there's one thing that is kind of intrinsic is that basket or a vehicle of some sort, and then sent down on the river and cast downward or
Hmm.
given to a lower class or maybe thrown
Yeah.
down to the earth.
Downstream. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Um, so yeah, you will hear it rhyming with a lot of other stories. Um, so then I'll just kind of, so these are many of the incarnations of the same concept,
Hmm.
uh, but I'll just kind of tell it through Hephaestus's eyes because it will be really important and very informative for going forward for many people, I think.
Hmm.
Um, so Hephaestus is the son of Hera. Hera was the mother of Hephaestus, and she created him through parthenogenesis,
Hmm.
meaning she made him with no daddy.
Ah,
She,
wow.
she made him on her own. And this will ring very true to the Gnostic myths of Sophia.
Hmm.
That Sophia created
The,
Yaldabaoth
right.
and was embarrassed or there's some sort of like uh, a heartbreaking, heart-wrenching denial of the child.
Hmm.
And so the placing him in a cloud of mist of obscurity or sending him away is all packed in here. So Hera, she Hephaestus is lame, his legs don't work, and she throws him out of Olympus, and he goes falling into the water originally, and a bunch of, I believe, maenads or nymphs catch him, so he
Hmm.
doesn't die. So he gets embraced by these mermaids or sirens, if you will. And I love this version of the story is that the maenads take him underwater and train him, and he becomes a master of underwater elements. And
Interesting. Yeah.
and he actually in his first casting out, uh, which you said Descartes means to discard,
To
right?
discard. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So he's discarded the first time, right?
Right.
And so in his first adventure on Earth, he actually starts underwater as low as you can go,
Hmm.
and he masters the elements from the sea, which is really informative. Because and I'm jumping ahead of myself, but I believe that he also has a mundane incarnation in uh, Theog- uh, Theognis. Theognis.
Hmm.
Theognis, uh, because Theognis was cast out to the island of Sicily and had to
Hmm.
make a comeback. He had to work his way back into the graces of society. Okay, so Hephaestus becomes a master of oceanic elements and builds up his reputation. And he starts to, let me get this right. He starts to send gifts. He's using his gifts
Hmm.
to give the world gifts and to earn a reputation and status and give himself standing. And so he's literally building himself up. Even a little bit of Forrest Gump going on here. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he builds himself up, and he eventually he starts to bribe his way into back into Olympus,
Hmm.
and he gives golden sandals to the minion gods. So he's bribing his way, and they're all like, "Oh, you should get some of these gold sandals that old Hephaestus has." Uh, and so they start to give him favors because of the golden sandals. And ultimately, he's got a long game plan here. And that is that he has built a golden throne for his mother, Hera, as a gift. And so the gods deliver the throne to Hera, and she's prideful.
Hmm.
And so she says, "Oh, look at you chumps with your golden shoes. I have a golden throne."
But she doesn't know where it came from. It was just delivered anonymously.
Well, she knows, yeah, she knows about the guy's reputation who gave it to her. And she's like, I think I should meet this guy because he's really
Ah, yeah,
honoring me.
yeah.
So, in the moment, so she invites him to come and be there in the moment that she assumes the throne.
Hmm.
And when she sits in the throne, clap, it locks her in place. It's
Oh,
actually a trap.
yikes.
And so here we have the chariot card and the stationary aspect of it that it
Hmm.
cannot move.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and so she's locked in the throne. And while she's locked in place, he begins to interrogate her. And he says, "Do you remember me? I am your child. And I'm here to find out the true story of my origin. Who's my
Hmm.
father?" And so he has flipped the tables on her in a really fascinating way. And now she's locked in place, and he gets to grill her and get information about his where he comes from.
And it's so cool that he's using a throne, which is like the ultimate symbol of hierarchy and power, and then yet it's inverted. It's becoming
Yes.
this prison. What a cool redemption arc for sure. That
Right.
is,
Great. Yeah. Well
yeah,
put, man. Very well put.
yeah.
Yes. So and then there are variations on this story. Always with the Greeks, there's all these variations, and they're all valuable. But uh, in many cases, he gets kicked out for that. He gets his answers, but in some cases, uh, he gets kicked out for that. But in other cases, he is invited to stay for a while, and
Hmm.
he and his mother make amends, and he becomes an ally to her. And then it's later on when Hera and Zeus get in an argument that he defends his mother, and Zeus is like, "Fuck you, kid," and kicks him out of Olympus again.
Because
So
Zeus
he
can be
goes
like,
through,
I'm not your daddy, you know?
right. And so he goes through a second fall.
Oh
And
man.
it's in
Yeah.
his second fall out of Olympus that he literally goes and lands on the island of Sicily.
Hmm.
And Sicily has one of the most mythologically significant volcanoes is Mount Etna.
Oh, okay.
And so in the mythology, Mount Etna is Hephaestus's forge, where
Hmm.
he's crafting his inventions. But this really kind of tickles my fancy because the island of Italy is kicking Sicily. And
Hmm.
so the volcano is,
Discarding it. Yeah.
yeah, is literally getting kicked in perpetuity. So
Hmm.
that just really that just gets me going. I love that little factoid that it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Maybe you've already
geologically accurate.
looked into it, and maybe you haven't, and it's going to be something interesting to consider. But I know that with Hephaestus and Vulcan and this volcano god, this it I'm always reminded of smithing and going into the forge and creating. And I know in Norse mythology that is such a crucial key, that is the dwarves in Jotunheim, and they're forging new weapons, new trinkets, and new tools that the other gods can be using in their adventures. It's really fascinating that those are the gifts that are being brought forward. And my question actually goes backwards, or I'm not sure what the chronology is, because I did look up a couple things for Agni, I believe. So they're Hindu deity. Because we did talk about Arjuna, and when I was looking this up, it made a connection to Odin, Agni and Odin.
Hmm.
Wasn't something I was expecting. Not sure if you had any insight on that. Otherwise, I wanted to ask you about Arjuna because I'm a little more familiar with that archetype in the Bhagavad Gita. But have you heard of this Agni being interrelated with Odin?
I've not.
Hmm.
I've not. And
I'll have
so
to
I,
circle back on that some other time then. Yeah.
yeah, and we might piss our buddy Balderson off if we make any undue,
Oh yeah,
undue
yeah. Maybe
assault.
we can have him dive into it. But I know for Arjuna's, character arc, I could say that Arjuna was apprehensive, didn't want to fight the battle at first when he's interacting with Krishna, right? Right in this battlefield. I'm curious if there was a connection here because I think they're sitting in a chariot or they're standing by a chariot when this is all happening, and it's
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure there's so many correspondences. I'm just curious if you had anything on the Bhagavad Gita story and how it might fit
yes,
in here.
yes, yes, yes. There is. There's okay. Like you mentioned the chariot.
Mm-hmm.
The time slows down.
Right.
Everything stops for this reflection, this powerful reflection. So we have that stationary aspect that is really important. And there's also this aspect of, um, much like Hephaestus when he's interrogating his mother, there's this aspect of familiar reflection, like
Mm,
where do I belong in this? And that is an overarching uh, theme
mm.
that is consistent throughout. You know what I mean? And I say theme, but I think the better word is spirit.
Oh yeah, yeah. The spirit of self inquiry, self discovery, the origin story that we all want to figure out. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people will concur that stillness is ideal for
Mm.
that for that reflection and that finding, what you're made of.
Yeah. And that's interesting segue. So we started talking about Rene Descartes, and he's famous for saying, among other things, that his ideas came to him through a spiritual revelation, which, given his situation, he must have been in a state of stillness, whether it was a dream or waking phenomenon where he was receiving this download of information from a higher power, from another dimension. So, like, what were your thoughts on that particular story that he was receiving this information from a spiritual source?
Well, my first glimmer to pay attention to Descartes was the his iconic idea of the mind body split.
Hmm.
And when I look at Auriga and in the story of this charioteer, I see a depiction of a mind body split and a full incarnation of that.
Hmm.
And so, in the most profound way, I immediately recognize that Descartes is tuned in to whatever this amazing archetype is. And then I started to research some of the details because I only knew the surface, and the more I look deeper and deeper, the more it comports to the story of Hephaestus. Um, and so yeah, right away I see that he was kind of weak or had that a weak um, uh, composure. That's not the word. Mm,
It's like fragile.
that he was fragile. Yeah, they say that he got a job being an instructor to like a royal family, and
Mm.
on his way walking through a snowstorm, he caught a cold, and that's what killed him.
Oh,
And
right. Yeah, yeah. Very fragile
it,
indeed. Yeah.
yeah, so the fragility of it is really fascinating. And now I'll just throw this in the mix to be kind of a little bit wildly mystical here. Um, Cancer. So the Chariot card is in Cancer.
Mm.
We mentioned that, but the Cancer constellation is the most faint of all the constellations.
Not as visible.
Yes, it has a very low libido.
Yeah, right, right.
It has a
Low on
low
frill.
it's low libido. Yes. So yeah, all of those things started to add up, and then I realized that so I started looking at Descartes' name. It's clearly Descartes. The cart is the chariot.
Mhm.
Uh, it's really, really gratifying, all of these things, and also that and then we call it a Cartesian split.
Mm.
Is a common name and or
Mind
common
body severance.
yeah. And so that split, the Cartesian split, that also is intrinsic to Cancer, as Cancer is the marcation of the dividing line, where we are no the year is no longer climbing up, and the arc of the sun is now split, and it's beginning to go
Oh,
through
I
a fall.
see.
And
Yeah.
so that also embodies the idea of being cast out or being thrown down.
Mm.
And so yeah, there's so many uh I mean, the word coincidence is just not sufficient.
That doesn't suffice there, no.
It really undersells the true power of what we're looking at here. It
Mm.
diminishes it I think, a disrespectful degree. But they're powerful. They're real powerful, these correspondences.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like the word coincidence kind of connotes like a lack of order. It's like this wasn't,
Right.
by design. This is just, oh, it's an accident. But it's hard to believe that after a while. And I know that another topic that was related to this, because you would send me very interesting memes, and I wrote this all down trying to organize it, but at the same time I know that this free flowing weave that we've been going through has been you know nothing you can ever plan for, but it's everything you would hope for. And
Right.
what I what I'm looking at here is a connection between, so we mentioned Hephaestus being cast out, and he's going down the river just like Moses.
Mhm.
But there was another idea there about a volcano god and someone named Mammon, god of wealth. Um,
Yes.
I'm looking for the connection here. I was unfamiliar with this volcano god connection.
Mhm.
Um, and one last thing, because I think it was on the same meme that you had brought up Proverb 2010. I don't know if that was related. If it's not, then maybe we'll touch on it later. But that was on the meme. If you remember what that was all about, I'd love to hear it. It was something about balance, I believe. It was some kind of balance, perhaps. Could be getting it wrong. I'm gonna have to look it up really quick. But let's
Yeah.
start with Mammon, the volcano god and the god of wealth, greed, perhaps too, right? There was some connection, some correspondence to Moses there, or Jehovah.
Yes. Yes. This is really wild. So what we've laid out so far to me is very like um it's the light side. It's
Mm,
very it's beneficial. These are all beneficial things to know. And nobody's really the bad guy. In fact, the whole moral of the story is like to try to make all the effort you possibly can to understand the other person's case.
yeah.
He could have been like, fuck you, mom, and he could have gone on a rampage and just used his abilities for bad, but he did the exact opposite. He worked to elevate, and in fact made allies out of what could have become his enemy.
Mm,
Um, and so some of this, so like all things, it's double edged, and there is like another side of it where I believe that in the modern day, a lot of what was ascended and beautiful has maybe been uh, fused in with materialism in
mm,
a kind of disappointing or a descended way. So this, some of this kind of brings forward the shadow. And I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody or make any claims that anybody's should,
No
whatever.
scapegoating today,
No
I suppose. Yeah.
scapegoating. That's it. I'm not trying to scapegoat. I'm just
Yeah,
putting some, I mean, yeah, thank you. I'm putting some facts together. Great turn of phrase. So, so I read Moses and Monotheism by
yeah.
Sigmund Freud. And a lot of people have discounted Sigmund Freud very adamantly, and I find that a little sad. Um, for one, Sigmund is a very synchro-mystical name, as he was fascinated with signs. Sigmund is signs of the world.
Hmm.
And whether he knew that or not, we may never know, but it really does, kind of trigger my curiosity. Um, but Sigmund Freud wrote many books. And in fact, I think technically the prequel to this might be to- Totems and Taboo, might have been where he started. But I picked up with Moses and Monotheism,
Hmm.
which was very controversial in its day. He started writing it when he was in Venice, and he says in his own words that this is not going to make a lot of people happy. There's going to be a lot of acrimony over what I'm about to say. And then the war kicks off, and he moves to London. And once he gets to London, he's like, woohoo, I could let the cat out of the bag and say whatever I want.
Nice.
And he does. He kind of turns things up a notch around chapter 3 or 4. And so he does. He is, for one, he's tracking the reason behind or the cultural history of circumcision,
Hmm.
and that hits a chord for a lot of us. um, in mythology, the feet are often euphemisms for the phallus,
Oh, wow. Hmm.
and that has served a lot of people well to consider.
I guess that's
And
why they joke about shoe size, right?
yes, you got it. Yes, we still do it today. So true, so true.
Yeah.
Um, so he's kind of keeping track of this covenant and the explanation behind why, while the Jews were leaving in Exodus, they're leaving Egypt and trying to separate themselves from Egypt, but they still have this circumcision covenant that will always remind them of their roots back to where they came from, which is the tracking. It's the feet. This is tracking their history. And so here we see how the phallus is, again, correspondent with where they come from.
Hmm.
And then another thing that he points out is that after the Exodus, that culturally, the Israelites were uh, amalgamating other deities in all the places that they went. And so
Hmm.
he is kind of constructing this composite image of what Yahweh has come to be in his many faces and personalities. And I have a theory that, see if I can make this right. I have a theory that maybe, it's just a theory, that maybe, let me get this right. Yes, Yahovah might be a tree based Yahweh
Hmm.
or Jewish God with trees and like a forest spirit aspect. And then Yahovah, no, I got it wrong. Yahovah would be the tree. And then Yahweh would be the volcano.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah,
Right. And
yeah.
so just a theory, but just kind of parsing out what Freud was laying down, you can kind of see how these different names have intention that is important to recognize.
Hmm.
So that's just a theory that I have. So yeah, Yahweh would be this volcano god that they picked up along the way. And so that is
Mhm.
one of many faces of Yahweh, you could say. Um, so that's just kind of some of the cliff notes of what I garnered from reading Moses and Monotheism. But it kind of freaks me out that you can play with that title, Moses and Monotheism, You can get a M-A-Mon, Mammon. And Mammon is an infernal spirit of greed
Mm.
or false valuation or uneven weights and measures.
Yes.
And here, with uneven weights and measures, we're dealing with the scales, we're dealing with precious metals and alloys.
Mm.
And so the Jews were put in positions uh, to be the class of people who institute usury in cultures.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And this explains quite a bit. It really it fills in a lot of blanks.
Mm.
And this is us, much like Hephaestus, uh, trying to build these bridges to understand what seems like a dark aspect of culture,
Mm.
and just grasping it better. You
Yeah, because
know.
like you can think back to Shylock from Shakespeare, and that's the Jewish figure who is actively practicing usury in the Merchant of Venice, and he's kind of joking but not really, saying he'll take a pound of flesh as interest, and that this portrays him in such a insidious manner, but not knowing the route, the story, the journey traveled by foot that kind of brings that cultural information together. It's really interesting, so I'm glad you broke it down, because
Yeah.
it's never something I've pieced together before. That was
Nice.
very, very novel indeed. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, one other thing to consider is that a volcano is the location where all of the gems and the jewels and the treasures come from.
And the
You
ring of
know, the,
power is destroyed there.
yes, it's also where it
Corrupted.
has to go for to be destroyed. That's such a good
Yes.
point. Yes, the carbon. So volcanoes create virgin territory.
Mm.
So the Virgo and the lion, so the lion is the fire and the Virgo is the earth,
Mm.
and the agony of the igneous rock coming up out of Vulcanalia, in that combination, it's just absolutely perfect. And so that's where you get jewels.
Mm.
And we know that the jewel industry is a Jewish
It's true.
dominated industry.
Yeah.
We're not hurting anybody's feelings with
No.
that. It's in the word.
Just
It's
more correspondences. Yeah.
totally, totally. Yeah, so these are all just, fascinating gems that we
Mm.
should all be able to appreciate and yeah, consider.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that so I have mistakenly often confused Yahweh and Jehovah. And it's interesting that if we're thinking about two different deities, two different beings, I almost think not to conflate one with the other, but we're dealing with a concept of like a devil and an angel on your shoulder. And
Mhm.
there's a really fascinating concept that you've been speaking about, where there's the phrase controlled opposition, which is more of like a culture war type of trope where someone is planted to spread a certain message to distract people. Maybe QAnon was something like that. And
Mhm.
but there's also a different, maybe more spiritual concept where opposition is a necessary force in order to bring out the gifts that we have and the insight that we have to unlock. It requires opposition. And I was wondering
Right.
if you could riff on that a bit, maybe explain more. I think there was a particular term that went along with it. I forgot how to say it. Do you remember the one that I'm referring to?
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna
Yeah.
try. I think it's enantodromia.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's the concept is fascinating. Yeah.
Yes, and Carl Jung is attributed for bringing this forward. I think Nietzsche probably was working with this term as well,
Mm.
but it is kind of uh, the inevitability of opposites, uh, gaining mastery over the opposites, in garnering the benefit from that effort of understanding opposites. And it's really a fascinating thing to consider. Um, and so one way that that plays out, coming back to the zodiac in a really fun way, is when you're looking at a constellation or a station of the heavens, it's always important to know where it came from, and which informs where it's going.
Mm.
So you have the stations before and the stations after. But then another thing that I'm finding very intrinsic to these myth building systems is to know the station that is opposite from where you are on the zodiac. So, you know, it's like as a beginner, I was very good at knowing, okay, it came from here, it's going there,
Mm.
and just following it in its station. But then over time, I've come to realize that key elements of of higher levels of understanding come from the oppositional, the 180 degree. 180 is a very sacred number. 18 has to do with reflectivity.
Mm.
Uh, R is the 18th letter. So many things are have to do with to rebound, to retrograde,
So
to
like as
re.
an example, like, you know, just for my sun sign, like I know, okay, if I really want to understand Taurus, I've also got to dive into the opposite Scorpio. If I want a full, complete understanding, that opposition, it'll give me like the complete axis, the, you know, a 360 view. Ironically, it's 180, but you know
Yeah,
what I mean? That's a
yeah,
complete picture. Yeah.
you've got it. You've got it. And so now the now controlled opposition. We can bring that into the zodiac as well, because on a standard Masonic tracing board, you will have a sun pillar and a moon pillar. And the way you will see people flip the zodiac all different ways, but I do my zodiac very simplistically, I think, very simplistically. And I put all of the spring and the summer months on top. So let's see, am I try to do this so that you see my hands going the right way?
Hmm.
So I do my spring equinox on the right hand side as we read, or I'm sorry, from the left hand side
Okay.
as we
Yep.
read from left to right. And that
Gotcha.
opens up the spring and the summer months. I flow in the direction that I read in the light of day.
Hmm.
We can see things flowing from that direction. But then you got to come full circle, which means you have to go in opposition. So you hit the 180-degree mark and you reverse the flow.
Hmm.
And you go drop down into the fall and the winter months. And so the flow of information goes in the exact opposite direction.
This is so cool because you were just bringing up Cancer being that cusp point. So like we start in the
Uh-huh.
springtime of Aries and we loop all the way to Cancer, and it's cool that, yeah, that's a
Yeah,
circular visualization. It's cool that you've been able to present that like that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. In my earliest tarot deck, which was really adorable, I think it's around here somewhere. It's cute. It's like I have little tiny cards, but they it's kind of neat because all of the spring and summer month tarot cards had golden ingredients. Like in the lover's card, the woman had golden hair,
Hmm.
and so there was a lot of gold ingredients in those summer months. And then down in the winter months, there was a lot of silver.
Oh wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so I was realizing that that was in encoding uh, a sun pillar up above and a moon pillar down below.
Hmm.
And this is really fascinating, and it has served me in quite a few ways to consider that uh, the the so the Greeks and the Hebrews were considered culturally opposed to one another.
Hmm.
They had a lot of acrimony in their evolution and relationship. And so Greek flows as we read from left to right. In Hebrew, the language flows in the opposite direction.
Exactly. Right.
Yes, so it kind of has that carrot and a stick, kind of keeping the whole system flowing.
Hmm.
But also, I learned that in the ancient world, that see, make sure I don't want to screw this up. When you're dealing with 50-50, you're either get it all right or you get it all wrong, right?
It's a flip of the coin.
Yeah, totally. So I believe that gold was valued in the West more,
Hmm.
and silver was valued in the East more. And so that those precious alloys were going in opposite directions. And so it's just a really fascinating fact that gold and silver have this diametric
Yeah,
kind of
it's like
pull.
a geographical metallurgical polar opposition right there. It's like two vortices
Yeah,
on the
man.
on the plane or the globe or the map. Yeah, it's so with it's funny. You When I spoke to Mario Garza, he was talking about correspondences with a sign. So like we could say, someone's sun sign or their rising or their moon, and a correspondence with a mineral. So like a salt, a type of, it could be potassium, calcium, some kind of electrolyte salt. And um, I didn't get too deep into it, but it would be fascinating since you brought up gold and silver. I'm just kind of like making a mental note for myself to go back and look through that, and maybe we can speak with Mario sometime about that. There's
Yes.
something, as we kind of wrap up, this time has been flying by, and I want to kind of share with you something I find pretty special. So I just moved to Texas about 6 months ago. I just came up on the 6 month mark recently, and I remember towards the end of my adventure, my childhood home, my experience in Connecticut, where I'm uh, coming from. On one particular evening, I was listening to you. I think you were on Vibrant with Chance on Interverse podcast. You were talking about the tarot Tories. Oh, there we go. There's the birch. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, the tarot Tories. You were I
Yeah.
guess you could say you were ascribing certain cards to certain areas on the US map. I think, we can go global some other time. Maybe you've already done that.
Mhm.
Kind of like how they put chakra points on the earth, but you were putting tarot cards that correspond with certain places. And it didn't seem obvious at the time, but now it's so obvious that Texas ended up being the star card. And just for my selfish, my selfish curiosity, now that I'm here, outside of Dallas, can you tell me more about this star correspondence? We got the Lone Star. I mean, what else is there to grasp about this? How did you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, man. This is a wild project of mine, and it is a brainchild. This is my brainchild, and um, this is kind of a fun thing because kind of a fun thing because I'm not appealing to authority.
Hmm.
You're not going to find this in a book. This is basically going to probably be my book someday. That
Yeah, rock
I'm
on.
gonna have to write. So uh, and what is kind of tricky is that it takes a while to make the case.
Hmm.
And so I have like a few choice locations that that you have to stack all of these proofs up before you can make a claim. The burden of proof is really on me. And I love that you said like at first it didn't click, but then as you thought about it, it started to sink in
Right.
because I can sink it in 21 times.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean?
consistently, right.
Yeah, yeah. And that big ups to our brother um Ross Ben. Big love to Ross Ben.
The
Um,
Susquehanna.
yeah, man, Ross Ben and Michael Wan, big love to those brothers. Um, I was listening to one of their shows that they did together, and it was while listening to them and their wonderful minds coming together that I had the epiphany
Hmm.
of what has come to become uh, the tarot Tory system. And so Ross Ben has this quote. I don't know if did I just say it. Consistency is the hallmark of truth.
Oh yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And that is such a great quote. I don't know. I'm giving it to Ross Ben because that's where I got it. And so they were kind of riffing on the idea that California was was conceivably named after a goddess, a Khalifa, in it.
Khalifa. Yeah.
Yeah, and in that she was decked out in gold. They were depicting her as large breasted, like, fertile and abundant,
Hmm.
and wearing jewelry as opposed to clothing, and it was just a beautiful vision. Uh, and it occurred to me that I was thinking of the Empress card because my favorite Empress card is an African queen,
Mm.
and she's in the seated position. And sure enough, the Empress card is based on Cassiopeia. And Cassiopeia, she is the husband of Iop, of Ayapa, was her husband. And they are wearing the namesake, the mantle. They're wearing the mantle of Ethiopia.
Ethiopia, yes.
Yes. And so these names are mantles that
Mhm.
prove their origin in a beautiful way. And so as they're describing this Khalifa of California, which it's even, she's ornate, she's like draping with
Born,
gold. So
yeah, right, right.
Khalifa Ornia, you know. Um, so as they're describing her, it just spark kicks off in my mind because I have the Empress card over in California, and I start thinking about, well, Virgo and Virginia is the other goddess on the other side of the country,
Mm.
and I just popped up. I on my little dry erase board that everybody has come to know and
It's a
know and
hallmark
appreciate.
of your YouTube channel. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I start like I draw a zodiac and I kind of start drawing a little United States on it. And I'm like, well, here's this is my equinox line
Mm.
that cuts right down the middle of the United States. Isn't that fascinating that Virgo lands in Virginia in the Empress card, who's in Pisces,
Mm.
that she would be just on the other side perfectly in Southern California.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, now wait a second. What line would be an incarnation of this equinox line on the zodiac? What famous line is immortalized in the minds of everyone? It's the Mason-Dixon line.
Mason-Dixon. Mm.
And the Mason-Dixon line is the 37-degree parallel. And so I just go with it. I'm just going with these staples, this consistency. I'm going with
Mm.
consistency. I'm following the consistency. And so if the 37-degree parallel is my equinox, uh, it turns out I've learned quite a bit about the 37-degree parallel just through this research. It turns out that also cuts right through the Strait of Gibraltar.
Mm.
And the Strait of Gibraltar is the location where the Pillars of Hercules were. It's where the origin of the phrase plus ultra comes from.
Okay, I heard you say that quite a bit recently.
Yeah, and plus ultra means more beyond.
Mm.
And so it's a very significant phrase. It's encouraging too. It is leading people to say,
More
look
and more,
more.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, don't be settled. Don't sink into anything.
Mm.
Go further, go further. And so I did. I took that as encouragement. I'm seeing something real here. And so sure enough, I put the zodiac in place and started filling in all these spots. And really fascinating things have come to light through that, because not only does the zodiac fit, but then I put in the tarot
Mm.
cards as well. And the tarot cards do a kind of a double spin. And then, like you said, the star card lands in Texas. You get what are they called? Mascots of sporting teams.
Yep.
The
Yep.
names of the sporting teams start to come to light, and so many things. So I'm convinced, but it does take a while for me to convince other people. That's why I use a lot of visual aid to kind of help things sink in. But I'll maybe put for the listeners,
Mm.
because people need the evidence. They need evidence.
Absolutely.
So we'll go back to the Chariot card.
Mm.
So the equinox line is the 37-degree parallel. And now the solstice line is the Mississippi River.
Mm. Oh, you just muted yourself, buddy. There you go.
There we go. Okay,
So
so
the Mason-Dixon line, and then the Mississippi River. You want to back up there?
yeah, yeah. So the Mississippi River it brings the dividing line not at the center of the United States. It brings it a little eastward, you
Mm.
know, and so you put a pretty, and it's not straight either. I think of the Mississippi as the umbilical cord. Uh,
Oh, okay. Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally it's the placenta of the
Yep.
country.
Yep. Saw that
Yeah,
one coming.
yeah, yeah. So uh, if that is the solstice line, then essentially just east of, so it cuts right through Chicago.
Hmm.
Chicago becomes the 50-yard line, so to say. And the 30 degrees east from Chicago onto the eastward opens up the pi wedge or the zodiac station of Cancer, which is a crab.
Hmm.
And as we've established, the corresponding tarot card is the Chariot card.
Chariot. Yep.
Well, lo and behold, you have Detroit.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Mo- is Motor
Motor
City,
City. Yeah.
right? And also you have the Indianapolis 500,
Mm-hmm.
which is a very famous racetrack. And my favorite part is that the peninsula of Michigan is a crab claw.
Yeah, that is. I can see what you mean. Yeah.
So these they become kind of silly and funny and like the
Mm.
thing that, like, they might seem childish or foolish, but that's the gates. That's the way to get
Yeah.
into the gates of heaven, is to have the likeness of a child. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, it's between the childlike mindset, having fun with it, and going on consistency. And also like it seems like, I'm gonna harken back to Rene Descartes for a second, or anyone else who made a profound discovery spontaneously through spirit, like Wasson and Crick and anything else in that kind of nature. You're given breadcrumbs and it's your choice to follow that trail of breadcrumbs. And I'm glad that you did, because when I was sitting in on that conversation, listening, I was now like, if I go back and watch that video, which I urge everyone listening to, go to Gabe's page, go to Slick Dissident on YouTube, find the Tarot Tories video. I think there's more than one singular video, which is cool too. But it's cool that once you have this perspective, you can take it seriously. You can take a look and decide for yourself. But the fact is that your perspective on this map that we're looking at will forever change, and that will lead to more and more breadcrumbs. And it's this fascinating endless search. It's really it's fulfilling in the way that you can look at a map, you can look at the US map, and knowing that on the surface, you see the states and territories, geography, uh, topography, but below the surface, you have other, almost like a divine correspondence. It's something I would not call it a coincidence, like you said earlier. This is like it's almost like it's hard to grasp how orderly yet profoundly chaotic it might seem. But once you put the pieces together, it creates this wonderful mosaic. And as a closing question, I don't want to hold you too late, because I know there's so much to be done, so many more things to be researched, and I wanted to ask you, as a closing question, because you definitely strike me as someone who's grounded, even though your ideas um can stretch up quite high in the air. And I'm a big fan of that. I think that's, it's the kind of conversation I love having. But you seem very grounded, because I don't know, perhaps you've discovered something that has helped you make sense of this chaotic world. And I'm curious, my question involves initiation. When we spoke about Greek mythology earlier, I was thinking about the rite of passage, the drinking of the brew in the mysteries of Eleusis. And I'm curious, that kind of thing may not be totally available to this modern culture. But what would you say for people who are looking to kind of have their own road to Eleusis, to dive into these mysteries? What kind of recommendations would you make to people who want to learn more and to dive into any topic? What comes up if you want to perhaps mentor someone who's looking to embrace their understanding of symbolism and the symbolic language of this wonderful world?
Man, such a good question, brother. Thank you for giving me the chance to even honor that question. For one, I would say um, face your fears right out the gate. If it is, uh, we want to throw things away too eagerly. We're too eager to dismiss and disregard and discard certain
Right.
things that look ugly on the surface. Um, but that's where growth is. That is where growth comes from. And so, for me, when my one of my favorite strategies in life is to convert my enemies into my allies. And so right now, uh, I've considered myself something of a Jungian, and I've really taken Jung to heart. And uh, and as part of that journey, I realized that Jung was an answer to what I think were very dangerous questions that Nietzsche had posited before him. And even Jung says in his own words, he's like, I don't really want to approach Nietzsche because I'm afraid that I'll find myself in him.
Mm.
And sure enough, that's a guiding light for me. Is so I've taken the time to set my Carl Jung uh, affinity
Hmm.
to the side and reach out and look into what the Nietzschean nihilistic abyss is all about. And that is a powerful strategy: is to learn your enemy and and gain power over their NAME, get their name, get control and command over the things that you fear, and then it becomes your ally. It becomes a power asset for you. And then one quick random footnote of trivia for everybody to maybe think about: Carl Jung was taken in by Alan Dulles uh, to do a psychological profile the uh, of the power structure of the Nazis.
Alan Dulles was affiliated with the CIA.
Yep, and in those days it was the OSS,
Uh,
and so he did a psych profile on the Nazis for Dulles, so that Dulles could uh, disseminate their potential decision making. And that is a very powerful little piece of history. And Dulles gave Carl Jung the agent number, I believe it's 488.
hmm.
So Carl Jung is agent 488, which is just really fascinating.
Hmm.
Um, and so Carl Jung was the perfect person to do that because he had such a grasp on the spirit that had inspired the Nazis. And this is where Friedrich Nietzsche was a philologist.
Hmm.
And philology is, I consider it lock picking. Having mastery over language is lock picking, and it opens gates in ways that are quite fascinating. But I think that it is not coincidental that the word Nazi, Nietzsche, and nature
Hmm.
are so wildly similar and correspondent. And so these are all just some little breadcrumbs for everybody else to maybe, broaden their horizons and look into the abyss and keep your feet. You need good foundation. That's
Hmm.
rule number one to all the martial arts I've ever learned. So
Well said. That is a very alchemical response. And, I'm reminded of the hero's journey because there is no hero's journey without opposition. And, really quick, because you just sparked
nice.
something, got to share the idea while we still have time, like it's fascinating. Fascism. This is the fascia. This is the bringing together, the merging of the corporate and the state, and that is what is fascinating is what brings us together. These ideas, I mean, Gabriel, like, we would have been brought together by some other ideas. We just happen to be picking up on particular ideas from a particular podcast, and ended up in the same YouTube stream one day, and the first time I ever heard you was on Mark Steves. My family thinks I'm crazy, and these ideas, this fascination, the fascia has brought us together, and I'm so thankful for that. And I'm gonna be diving into a lot more of what we've discussed tonight. I think I was imagining going into this. I've got my notes here, but I'm gonna fill up another page just from going back and listening and trying to decipher some of the weave that we've been through. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart here, and I'm looking forward to doing this again. But one more time, a YouTube channel. It's your main source of gravy. How can people find you? Please give our lovely audience a proper farewell.
Absolutely, yeah. So, Slick Dissident is my YouTube channel. It is a shared learning experience. I love comments. I love hearing, ideas that other people have inspired when they watch what I put out. And you can also find me pretty frequently over on the Juan on Juan show. Who,
Mm.
big up Juan. Uh, Also, I'm on the Rising from the Ashes with them quite a few
Yeah,
times, and then Chance Garchin on the Interverse. And I also weave with the Weaving Spiders Webs, one of my favorite little posses to be a part of. So,
love the spiders.
yeah, man, totally. And big love to Mark Steves, too, man.
Yeah.
Can't forget. My family definitely thinks I'm crazy. That's for
Mhm.
sure.
Because
Oh,
I moved from Connecticut to Texas, I know Mark would relate to this. My family thinks I'm crazy just for doing that. And yeah.
yeah.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? I mean, you're a frequent guest on many of these awesome shows. I'm sure people have probably asked you this before. You're going to start your own show sometime. What do you think?
I do. I need to. It's inevitable. It's totally in the cards. I'm a bit of a luddite, uh, and it is my weakness. Like my own, I should take my own advice.
Mm,
It is a frontier that I have a natural hesitancy, but it is something that I need to face and dive right into because it is time for me to spread some wings. Yeah, so you probably see me uh, putting more out with more of my special flair to it.
awesome. Well, I respect that. Big ups, brother. I'm very grateful for you, and I'm looking forward to doing this again soon, man. Hope you have a great
Likewise,
night.
bro. Big love, Jake.
Big love.